Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, Distance Makes the Heart Grow Weaker, written by stendylover. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin. Chapter 1, Don't You Need a License to Take Pictures of People Like That? Zero squints at the camera held proudly in Denki's hands. After 3 more shudders and flashes, he's granted a response. No, I don't think so, actually. Denki shrugs. Well, I hope not. Or I'll be going to jail. He laughs at himself. Ever since his grandfather gave him his old, rusty camera, Denki has decided it is calling to be a reporter. For the past 3 days, he's been entranced, photographing everything he sees. Including wisps of blonde hair. Point that camera at me again and I'll lodge it in your throat. Katsuki spits, barely looking at Denki as he lowers his camera. Sure thing, he groans. Denki, Katsuki, Zero and Izuku found themselves observing a third-year training session. With Izuku sick, and no lessons until later in the afternoon, the 4 wanted to make use of their free time. Well, Katsuki and Izuku did, but the others liked to follow like helpless ducklings. Denki flashes his camera once more as a girl with a water quirk shot a cacophony of aqua bullets. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen, he marvels as he lowers his camera. Izuku, second in amazement, leans further over the railing. You're right. These third years are incredible. He gleams, watching a boy dart from corner to corner. Are they hell? Katsuki groans. I could do that in my sleep. Sure, Denki teases. The boy with an explosion quirk could shoot water bullets in his sleep. Watch yourself, or I'll blow that camera up in my sleep. Katsuki spits, and Denki ducks his camera safely in his lap. Izuku interrupts their bickering. Hey, do you guys want to go down there to watch them closer up? I think I could take better notes if we were on the ground. The third-year training facility had a helpful row of seats elevated above the grounds of the building. It was mainly used for observing battles while staying safe. Anyone was allowed to sit in them so long as the building was open, and the boys took that opportunity for the day. Sure, I think that could be cool. Zero offers, and with that it was decided. The boys head down the thin spiral stairs and collect at the edge of the facility. Cementos was currently overseeing the training, and he greeted the boys as they caught up to him. Izuku, getting the most out of this while the others faffed about, took out his notebook and began to observe the students. He watched a boy with long, thin antennae. From the looks of the people around him, and their seizing and yelping, he had to be able to produce harmful rays from the antenna. Are you watching Yuto? Cementos asks as he peers down to Izuku's notes. The boy with the antenna. Yeah. Izuku looks back up. What's his quirk? He can send out waves from the tips of his antenna that cause the people in the radius to seize up. It's remarkably powerful in close combat, however his waves only scale a few meters before losing intensity. Therefore, Yuto needs to get close before proving useful, and that can be quite a challenge. Cementos offers, and watches Izuku scribble down notes with remarkable speed. I wonder how he gets around the close-range issue. He mumbled to himself, much to the disdain of Katsuki, who can't stand the lowly murmuring beside him. Why don't you ask him? Yuto. Cementos calls. Talk to these students a moment. The boy, with pale skin and dark ruffled hair, looks over at his calling and hurries down from the ledge he was on. He, Yuto, arrives shortly after, breathless and sweaty. He heaves. Up. Midoriya had a few questions about your quirk. Cementos explains. You don't say, Yuto raises his brow. Hey, I know you from the sports festival. That crazy kid who broke, 100 bones. Sure, that's me, but I was curious about the close-range aspect of your quirk. Izuku stars, raising his notebook to his chest. Do you find it difficult to get in close, or are you quite good at that? Well, Yuto shrugs. I had to have a lot of practice in stealth, so instead of fighting my way into close combat I sneak up on them. It's kinda tricky, really, but I'm getting the hang of it. He explains, beginning to feel proud of himself. That's amazing. Izuku drifts off, lost in his notes and workings. He's so preoccupied with writing that he doesn't notice the loud trail of insults Katsuki begins to spit, or the alarmed calling of a girl's name from both Yuto and Cementos, or the bizarre, the F, from Katsuki before Izuku is bashed into and trampled by a girl. It's a light hit, but he's tumbled to the floor alongside the girl and Yuto. Izuku sits up, brushing dirt out of his hair, and rubbing his shut eyes. Manami. What were you trying to do? Cemento scolds, but he doesn't sound particularly shocked. Perhaps Manami is used to cataclysmic encounters. Sorry. Sorry. She begins, her voice light and delicate. She's laughing. I just wanted to get a hit on Yuto while he wasn't paying attention. I didn't mean to hit the kid. She sighs, and Izuku begins to open his eyes. DMN nerd, you're just always in the crossfire, aren't you? Katsuki groans, and Izuku looks up to him as he finally pries his eyes open. Katsuki looks bored, perhaps a little fed up, and he's crossing his arms over his chest like an impatient mother waiting for her kid to stop crying. He frowns at Izuku, and then jolts when he truly looks at him. Who the F are you looking at like that, because it's sure as hell not me. Katsuki flinches. Sorry, Kaken. Izuku mutters, shaking his head to snap out of his gaze. Will you help me up? He asks, putting a hand out. Get up yourself. I'll help you. Denki grins, pulling Izuku up. Not before taking a photo of him, dirty on the floor. I'm sorry, kid. The girl, Manami, puts a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Are you alright? I didn't touch you, did I? Didn't touch me. Izuku asks, a little thrown off by the strange nature of the question. Judging by her paling face, this was very important to her. Maybe she was a germaphobe. No, don't worry. I think it was just Yuto that bashed into me. Izuku says, trying to be reassuring. Oh, she sighs, that's good. Well, I'll try and refrain from jumping around like that. Ha, Cementos. She grins. If you could, Manami. Zero WHPs his phone out from his pocket and has a scan for the time. He groans dramatically. We should probably get going, he says, and jumps as Denki takes a flash of his face. We, have training now. Really? Denki whines. I definitely won't be able to bring my camera, will I? Their voices fade as walk out of the facility. Izuku not forgetting to wave his upperclassmen goodbye. Finally you're doing us a favor. Katsuki complains, unreasonably hostile toward his friend. Chill, you're loving my photos. Denki teases, before raising an eye to Izuku. Hey, Midoriya, you alright? Izuku rubs his temple wearily and pulls a sour face. I'm okay, I think I'm just getting a headache. He says, a uneasy feeling bubbling in his stomach. That girl left him feeling awfully unsure about himself. Alright, but don't hesitate to call sick if you're feeling worse. We all know how much you love to push yourself. Denki chides, pulling a laugh out of Izuku. Okay, sure thing. Training wasn't so grilling under the supervision of Present Mike, but there was still a lengthy agenda intended to follow. Mike held up a large sheet of paper, pushing up his yellow glasses and scanning the sheet. So, Eraser wants us to practice long-distance combat. I think he means finding solutions to problems from a distance. I guess I can team you up and place you at opposite ends of the arena. Mike mutters, quieter than usual and half to himself. There's a long pause before he raises himself up to his usual standard. All right. Partner up and we'll go from there. He yells, sending shudders down spines of the students. It doesn't take long for the class to team up, comfortably sorting themselves into the people they work best with. Mike watches the pairs begin to form, and sections the duos into two teams. It's an even and seemingly fair split, the best outcome for a teacher who doesn't know the student's abilities as well as Aizawa would. Okay. He sings. Team A, whose leader I'm appointing to be Midoriya, see yourselves to that corner of the arena. Mike points to a distant area. And Team B, whose leader can be Bakugo, over there. But, before you go, both leaders take a flag and place it in your corner. First team to make it back to me with their enemy's flag wins. Think smart and hard. I'll shout when it's time to start, so hurry. Run. Mike throws out a red flag and a blue flag with an encouraging thumbs up and toothy grin. Both teams hastily make way to their area of the area, nervous to not place their flag down before Mike decided to yell. Midoriya, Ida calls, midway through running. Trust me with the flag and I'll run it over quickly. Tsu, accompany me and help me to protect the flag. He decides, picking out the person he believes to be able to somewhat match his pace. Even though Aoyama was his pair. Sounds good. Izuku says, throwing the blue flag to Ida before watching him and Azui speed off. It was a far distance to run, therefore why Mike gave the students 10 minutes to make it to their corner, set up the flag, and strategize. Plans required an understanding of what the other team would do, and that's why Izuku decided combat was more important than defense. Knowing Kaken, he began, hand finding itself on his chin as it usually did when he planned, he'll run off from the group and go straight to attacking us, thinking he'll be able to capture the flag on his own. Then, Kirishima will follow him, trying to convince him to stop. And Kaminari will follow, also, but for that I'm not sure why. The group nods, finding comedy in the truth of it. Therefore, we're pretty soon going to be up against explosions and electricity. That's why we need to begin combat quickly and stop them before they get too close. Todoroki, Izuku prompts, and Shoto looks up. I say you start toward their corner on your own and try to find them before they get to us. You're the best at large-scale attacks and probably have the highest chance at stopping them. Shoto nods, unable to find faults in the plan. Should I beeline, or do you think they'll take an opposing route? Kaken will want to make it quick, I think you should head straight on. Or, listen for explosions. Okay, Shoto looks out to the direction they came. I'll try my best. He says before he heads out with pace and leaves the others to plan. What next, Deku? Ochako, Izuku's original partner, prompts. I think it would be useful for you, Yaoyorozu, to work on making barriers and defenses for the flag. It's a useful commodity the other team don't have. Izuku strategizes, and Momo begun quickly creating planks of wood to border up the flag. And then Izuku stopped short, suddenly hit with a wave of faintness. He felt his skin prickle in the way it would when you begin to go lightheaded. Deku. Ochako flinches, are you okay? You're going kind of pale. I must say, Ida comments, you haven't been looking yourself. Do you think you might be getting sick? No, Izuku gulps, a guilty feeling welling in his turned stomach as he thinks over what Denki told him. To not lie. I think I'm just a little tired because I was training late last night, but I'm not sick. There was an unsteady silence for a moment, before Izuku turns to himself again. Anyway, I've been thinking that Hagakure would be the best to actually steal the flag as they won't see you coming, but you alone would be at risk of caught and we don't know what defenses they've put up. So maybe Tokoyami would be a good match for accompanying you, as Dark Shadow is difficult to fight while also on defense. I believe that's a good start, but those two alone would struggle. Ida adds, perhaps Uraraka and I would be more useful on the enemy's side, as I'm no good at defense, and Uraraka could prove useful in stealth and exit operations. Good point, Izuku notes. It could work well if you were able to quickly float the flag and its holder out of the crossfire. I think you two should go. On it, leader. Ida states, finding himself immersed in his role as he usually was. I'll make you proud, Deku. Ochako grins with a mock salute. She giggles as she runs off with Ida, floating her way over the buildings. Hagakure and Tokoyami, as commanded, follow along with them in an attempt to steal the flag. All that's left is Izuku, Azui, Momo, Aoyama, and Sato, all much better suited to close combat. Should we stay here and defend the flag? Momo asks Izuku, who has been crowned a leader by teammates, and not only Mike. I think that's the best course of action. Todoroki might not be able to hold off Kaken and the others, and so we should stay if we don't know what's going to happen. And are you sure you're all right? I mean this kindly, but you do look a little unwell. Momo squints as she places her last wooden defense. Izuku focuses in on himself, truly searching for an answer to the question. Around Ida and Ochako, he felt the urge to lie, knowing how they would worry for him, and maybe falter on their mission. Honestly, he felt a little queasy. I think I might be coming down with something, but I'm okay for now. I'll try and visit Recovery Girl after class. Don't push yourself, Midoriya. Azui prompts after searching around the area for the other team. Izuku laughs, don't worry, Tsu. Katsuki was brash and closed-minded, his only saving grace the raw power he possessed. Heading, alone and full speed, into the enemy's territory would be a foolish idea to anyone, but Katsuki had the skill to compensate for it. At least he, when up against the opponent who most definitely would come for him, could save himself. No one was shocked when Shoto found them. Katsuki's loud and obnoxious explosions made him easy to find, and Shoto followed their sound until he encountered the three. Izuku was mostly right, in that Katsuki had run off, and Kirishima had attempted to stop him. But Denki was a no-show, possibly because Kyoka, his teammate, would never allow him to make a dumb decision like that. Come to fight me, you icy hot BSTRD. I wanna see you try. Katsuki calls, voice reverberating around the faux city. Shoto didn't speak, partly because the answer to the question was obvious, and he didn't want to raise his voice. He sent forward a large wall of ice, stopping with intense precision before he reached Kirishima, who he knew would struggle to escape from it. For Katsuki, he had no regard of precision. A large explosion threw Katsuki upwards and out of the crossfire, bursting a huge hole in Shoto's ice. He laughs maniacally from atop a building, fingers curling around the plug in his gauntlet. Taste this, nerd. He shouted before releasing and plummeting an explosion in Shoto's way. Rapidly, he counteracts with his own burst of flames, which redirects the fire upward. Katsuki yells something incoherent with a rage directed at the fail of his plan. Kirishima finds his way up to join him, and tries to cool him off. There's an orange and green glove pointed at Shoto, who could care less for the intimidating scowl Katsuki sports on his face. Take this. He hears, but makes no attempt to move. Surprisingly, but not upsettingly, the explosion Katsuki produces is larger than he anticipated, but the technical skill of his ice blocks and protects him from the impact. You idiot! Is faintly called from the other side of the ice. Before long, a precise and rounded hole cracks through the ice, a window into the sight of Katsuki and Kirishima. Shoto can see the two through the cavity and waits for Katsuki to move again. Suddenly, a familiar face joins Shoto on the space he made for himself atop an opposing building. It's Azui, who has perched onto the roof beside him. Todoroki, you need to go back to the flag. Yaoyorozu wants you to use your ice to cool Midoriya down. He's got a pretty bad fever. Really? Shoto questions, taking a look back at Katsuki. What about Bakugo? Sato is on his way to try and hold them off. He's a good match for Kirishima, and able to withstand Bakugo's blasts better than the rest of our team. I'll stick around to help him, too. If you say so. Shoto decides, and heads back the way the flag is. Are you kidding me? Where is that BSTRD off to? Katsuki yells, 1 foot forward in his direction before Azui wraps him in her frog-akin tongue, throwing him over the edge of the building. Slimy beach. He shouts, voice trailing as he plummets. Izuku is dazed with his head on Momo's lap as she crafts ice packs to keep him cool. If it were any other boy, she'd probably feel a little squeamish with their heads resting on her legs, but Izuku wouldn't think perversely of a paper doll, and she's willing to let her maternal instincts take over for him. Plus, he's half unconscious. Shoto lands on rooftop with agile ease. He wanders over to them, the only two left, with bouts of curiosity. "Is he okay?" he asks calmly. "He said he was feeling unwell a little while after you left, and soon after he dropped to the floor with a temperature. I think he's really sick," Momo says, pulling Shoto down once he's in reach and silently instructing him to cool his head. "I told Aoima to inform Mike, but all we can do is wait." The soft air of Shoto's ice, produced on the lowest intensity he can perform, floats over Izuku's reddening forehead. Besides the crystalline sound of his quirk, the only sound is the soft and uneasy breathing from Izuku's parted lips. "He sounds sick," Shoto adds rather obnoxiously. "Well, he is," Momo says bluntly. They wait impatiently for Mike, or some kind of assistance, to join them. It's a wonder when the loud and grating call of Mike is heard over the buildings. "Okay. Time's up. Head back to the starting point," he shouts hurriedly, heard from every inch of the facility, and it's not particularly long after that when he shows up, Aoima close behind him. Shoto stops cooling him when Mike arrives, and much to their disappointment, it didn't do much to help him. "What the hell happened?" Mike groans, pulling his cheeks in stress. "Shota's gonna kill me if Midoriya collapses or something," he mutters as he kneels down. "Midoriya said he was feeling unwell, and now he's coming down with a fever," Momo explained as Mike studied the sleeping student. Izuku's breaths came slowly and difficultly, like his nose was blocked or throat was sore. "Seriously. This kid never catches a break. I guess we'll have to carry him down to Recovery Girl, she'll know what to do with him." Mike, slightly unhelpfully, decides. "I can craft a stretcher to make it easier," Momo offers. "Don't worry," Shoto interrupts, "I don't mind carrying him. It would probably be easier, anyway." There's a general agreement, and Izuku is lifted onto Shoto's back. It takes them a while to navigate their way back to the entrance of the facility, but Mike is glad to see all of the students made it there in one piece, even if they look impatient. "Who'd have known Deku is the reason for this, but stole my win. The F is wrong with him, he didn't do anything," Katsuki, characteristically, complains. Mike looks over to Katsuki as he frantically tries to call someone. Midoriya is sick. I guess you can all just, Shota." "Hey, you're never gonna guess what." He gulps. "Wanna come to ground beta?" "Yeah, I know you're sick, no, I get that." There's a long pause. "Do you know what, it is actually Midoriya's fault." There's a resounding scoff from Katsuki. "Please, please. Oh. And bring Recovery Girl on your way, yeah." "Sure, I owe you. Be quick." The phone bleeps and Mike pockets his phone. Didn't know who else to call. "Do you always call Aizawa when you don't know what to do?" Mina asks with a grin. "Pretty much. It's safe to say Aizawa is temperamental when he arrives at the training grounds." The other students were prompted to leave, considering there wouldn't be much more to the lesson. But some stayed. Like Momo, who crafted items to aid Izuku, such as a pillow for his head. And Shoto, who cooled Izuku as before, and also to help carry him out. And Denki, Shiro, and Katsuki, who were there when Izuku started feeling sick. Mike encouraged them to wait around, as Recovery Girl would likely have questions for them. "Okay, make it quick. What the hell happened?" Aizawa groaned, battling his own illness. "People weren't rushed over when he fell sick." Well, besides Mike, not called for but still insistent that Aizawa eat the soup Mike made for him the night before. "I think he's got a fever, but he's unconscious and getting worse. Shortness of breath, hot and pale skin. Occasionally he wakes up to cough, but he hasn't opened his eyes yet." Momo explains, as quickly as she can for Aizawa. Oh dear, recovery girl says, this boy won't leave my care until the day he graduates. So, how long has he been sick? Aizawa asks. Since, like, 12, Denki says, unfocused and watching birds swirl above him. How do you know that? Well, Denki snaps out of it and looks over to Aizawa. We were watching the third years around that time, and after he got knocked over he was looking a little unwell. I don't know, you'll probably have to ask him when he wakes up. Knocked over. Recovery girl questions. Some girl bashed into him while he was asking this guy some nerdy questions. He was fine, though, they just tumbled down. Hey. He lightens up. I have a picture. Denki fiddles around his coat pockets for his camera. He takes time to flick through the pictures until the one of Izuku, flattened on the floor, pops up. Take a look. He says, more proud of his photography than keen on helping Izuku. No one seems to care for his image, not making any correlation to the incident and his fever. Recovery girl almost verbalizes her indifference before Aizawa speaks. Hold on, he gulps. That pink-haired girl, is she the one who bashed into Midoriya? Aizawa asks, stopping to clear his ill-affected throat. Yeah. Denki says. She was like, super spooked. Midoriya thought she was a germaphobe. Denki laughs a little, but falters when he sees Aizawa's paling face. He says bluntly, and most of the students recoil at the unusual profanity from their homeroom teacher's mouth. That's great. That's, yeah. Amazing. He lists dully, sarcastically. What's up? Shiro asks, speaking on behalf of the students remaining. Who did Midoriya first speak to when he got up? Aizawa asked impatiently. I don't know. Shiro shrugs. Well, think, idiot. Aizawa groans. Recovery girl chooses to move past his hostile attitude to his students on the basis that Aizawa is sick. Another time she will scold him for being so rude. Oh. Denki interrupts, itching to prove himself useful. It was Bakugo. He said something about how Midoriya was stupid for being in the way, and so Midoriya said sorry to him or something. There's a long, tense, and nervous silence. Aizawa doesn't react. He sighs, longer and heavier than usual. Todoroki, help recovery girl take Midoriya to medical. And Aizawa hesitates. Bakugo. Go with them. I don't want to. Katsuki says hurriedly. Do as I say. Aizawa says, hair beginning to float above his shoulders as his eyes start to glow. Geez, fine. Katsuki groans, inadmittedly scared of Aizawa. The four of them, followed closely by Momo, Denki, and Shiro, hurry off to aid Izuku. Left behind are Mike and Aizawa, both tense for different reasons. I can't believe that child dash, I'm so sorry. Mike yells, interrupting Aizawa suddenly. You should definitely be home sleeping and I called you. But I panicked. You're so much calmer than me and I was totally freaking when I saw him. Aizawa furrows his brow as Mike continues to list of thousands of loud justifications to why he called him. Partially because the noise is hurting his head, but mostly out of confusion. Don't stress, you did the right thing. He offers. You think? I suppose. Woohoo. He yells, loud enough for the students to hear from their increasing distance. Come on, you need to go home. I can see you sweating and it's totes gross. Aizawa flinches at the strange term but, like he always does, follows Mike regardless. Chapter 2. It's not long before Izuku is tucked into a medical room bed, ice pack blanched over his face and blanket folded under his arms. He was, with much struggle, changed out of his hero costume. And now, with messy, sweaty hair and rosy cheeks, Izuku slept soundly. Throughout the journey and preparation, he didn't wake once. His soft breaths escaped his parted lips, that being the only major sign he was still with them. Katsuki, under firm instruction of Recovery Girl, and then backed up by All Might, who had no idea what happened, and only came to see if his successor was okay, was waiting outside of the medical office. He only chose to wait outside because the smell of the office reminded him of the first time he broke a bone. And, never to be shared with anyone, it made him queasy. For the first time in his life, he was excited to see Aizawa trekking down the hall. He had been, for over an hour, aching for some kind of answer to why he was chained here. Katsuki might be in but he didn't shout at old women. So when Recovery Girl didn't budge, he huffed and sat outside, arms crossed like a petulant child. Good, Bakugo, you stayed. I hoped Recovery Girl understood how important it was that you did. I guess I got my point across. Aizawa says, opening the door ajar to peer in at Izuku. However, the condition of his student wasn't at the top of his list, so he closes the door and turns back to Katsuki. You can't blame me for his fever. Katsuki starts immediately. If anything, blame yourself. You probably gave him your lame sickness. Aizawa shakes his head. I'm not blaming you, but you are affiliated and therefore I must speak with you. He says calmly, taking a seat near him. Look, just because most bad things happen to Deku because of me, doesn't mean they all do. Katsuki huffs, as if that's any rational justification. Well, Aizawa starts, momentarily speechless. It's not that. It's Midoriya's fault you're involved, or, more broadly, Minami's fault entirely. Aizawa tries to explain, but his vagueness only angers Katsuki. Spit it out. I have your DMN work to do, so if you want me to turn it in you better hurry it up. Katsuki spits, fashionably temperamental. I understand your haste, Bakugo, but this is something serious. I need you to relax in order for you to take it in. So, take a minute, and I'll tell you properly. Aizawa, though in theory patiently, but practically argumentatively, tells Katsuki. Before Katsuki can offer up another bashful insult, Aizawa shoots him a stern stare. Katsuki swallows his retort and gives in. Fine, tell me your dumb story. Right. He starts, and almost chokes on the words he intends to tell. Breaking news like this to anyone else would be easy. It's hard to think of other students who would care about something like this. But, just his luck, he's having to speak to Katsuki, the most irritable person alive. Well, what Midoriya is experiencing is no ordinary fever. It's a quirk-induced fever. One, that, you're unfortunately affected by. How? Katsuki asks quickly, struggling to conceal his impatience. Well, when Minami bashed into Midoriya, she had the intention of hitting Yuto with her quirk. Instead, she landed a hit on Midoriya. What's that got to do with me? If you'd let me finish, her quirk is a special one. When she touches someone, they're entranced, and if they find themselves further than a meter from her, they grow to experience feverish side affects. Further the distance, stronger the symptoms. Aizawa explains with growing trepidation. However, the quirk is activated through call and response. If she lands a hit and prompts them to speak to her, her quirk works in her favor. The issue. Midoriya spoke to you. Katsuki didn't reply for a while. Aizawa begins to think the horror was encompassing his body, but perhaps he wasn't clear enough, and Katsuki frowns. I don't care how some extra's quirk works, what's that nerd's illness got to do with me? Bakugo, when Midoriya got up, he first spoke to you. Call and response. Feverish symptoms. Can't you puzzle this together? Aizawa states impatiently. So, Katsuki groans, laying down the groundwork for himself. This pinky girl touches someone, gets M to talk, and her quirk works. He continues once Aizawa nods. But, Deku spoke to me. So, what you can't spit out of your mouth is that the nerd is having this fever because he's away from me. He states, wonderfully calm. In essence. Well, what are you waiting for? Call the freak over and get her to fix it. You don't have to look all pale about it. Katsuki retorts, usual anger seeping back to him. He's almost fuming when Aizawa doesn't say anything. Hello. Are you deaf? There's a problem. Aizawa says bluntly, severity not in his tone, but the devoid look in his eye. Manami, she, left for a vacation in Europe, last night. For 2 weeks. Aizawa almost feels the words weighing his soul down as he says them. If he had to break the news to any other student, they'd have no trouble seeing the positive or empathetic side to things. But Katsuki, the king of anger and rage, slowly takes in the words like a pot of water coming to boil. So, you're telling me, I have to keep that nerd within a meter radius for 2 weeks. There's a short, bated pause. Calm before the storm, more commonly described. Are you out of your mind? I'd rather swallow a brick than endure something so horrific. You have to be kidding. Seriously, this isn't funny. Katsuki yells, far too loud for the hallway. I'd love for this to be a time for jokes, Bakugo, but I'm afraid it's all true. 2 DMN weeks. Do you even realize how awful that is? It doesn't have to be a bad thing. There is nothing that could turn this into a positive. This is awful. Worse than war. Worse than famine, and orphans, and disease. Aizawa flinches as Katsuki, dramatically, turns his tone more severe. I think I'm going to kill myself. Tell that beach to get a plane back, it's her DMN fault. Bakugo, you need to stop swearing. Aizawa chides, but ultimately doesn't push too hard. He'd probably swear too if he were Katsuki. Look, this isn't as awful as you're making it out. It's not like you'll be attached at the hip. It's a meter. You sit a meter apart in class. It's a meter 2 DMN close. Might I remind you the seating plan was optional? No, you may not. Katsuki yells, rage overtaking his sense of reason. There's a silence that falls over the two. Aizawa can only hear the staggered breath from Katsuki's furious nostrils, while Katsuki listens to the angry thoughts plaguing his head. The door just behind Aizawa slides open, and Recovery Girl peers out. Midoriya is waking up. Perhaps Katsuki being outside is cheering him up. She smiles, aware of the flame she's fanning in Katsuki's soul. Aizawa stands and coughs a little, still ultimately unwell. He pulls Katsuki up by his sleeve, knowing a simple question wouldn't be enough to raise him. They, one willing and one captive, stagger into the room where Izuku is brushing the hair from his head as he sits up. He looks over to the two with sleepy eyes, trying to make out who they could be. There's an unnatural spring as he jolts up, smile playing on his lips. Kaken, you came to visit. Katsuki, too angry to speak or simply protesting, shuts his mouth and pulls out of Aizawa's firm clasp. How are you feeling, Midoriya? Aizawa asks, wandering over to the edge of the bed. Oh, I don't know. I never really get sick, so I'm pretty unused to this. Hey, Izuku says once he wakes up fully. Where is Kaken going? Almost immediately, Aizawa wraps his scarf around the defiant boy's body, tugging him over to his side. Katsuki, still impossibly silent, squirms in the clasps of the rope. Bakugo wanted to see if you were alright. Aizawa says coldly. Really? Then why is he trying to escape? Izuku pps his head. I'm not sure, because I did tell him that, due to his unusual kindness, he didn't have to do this week's homework. Aizawa says firmly, words fighting their way through his barred teeth. The scarf slowly tightened. Izuku smiles on behalf of Katsuki. Seriously. That's super nice. Get your stupid rope off me or I'll blow the room up. Katsuki finally folds, spitting out words like bullets. The scarf slowly falls off his body and he shudders out of its grip. There's an awkward air that encompasses the room soon after. Recovery Girl wordlessly fills out forms on Izuku's behalf. She knew all of his credentials from him visiting so often, and her handwriting was neater than his. She almost laughs at the sticky situation these two have found themselves in, again. Time after time, it was always Deku and Kaken. Anyway, have you anything to say, Bakugo? Aizawa says to fill the silent room. His words sounded more like threats than encouragements. Katsuki murmurs, thinking about the grip of the scarf and the week free of homework, and Aizawa's scary glare. Are you sick? Aizawa would punch the incompetence out of him if no one were watching. Well, yeah, Kaken. That's why I'm here. Izuku frowns. Right. Well, Aizawa starts before the silence grows again. I've asked All Might to pay you a second visit, so you two can wait here until then. 2. Katsuki says through his teeth. 2. See you in class. Aizawa leaves before he can suffer Katsuki any longer. Their bickering just had to be recovery girl's problem. Going from training, to the journey to medical, to waiting on Aizawa, and now All Might, the sun had started to set. The pinkish glow the sun made just before it traded places with the moon swarmed the medical room. It still smelt like childhood tears and Katsuki's broken bones, but the room was warm and calm. Izuku occupied himself with homework that All Might had brought for him on his first visit. It was a selfish thing to bring, the work you needed your student to do, but he couldn't really think of much else Izuku would want to occupy himself with. Turns out, there isn't much. Then pencil scrawling along the paper coaxed Katsuki into an irritable trance. All he could think about was the paste lines and page turning. It's all he wanted to think about, because the more he thought about Izuku, the more ill he felt. Hey, Kaken, isn't it getting a little late for you? Izuku asks, not looking up from his math problems. No. Katsuki answers, and that was that. It took a few more moments for Izuku to speak again. He finishes his current problem and sets his book down. Why are you here? He asks, bluntly, because that's how Katsuki likes his questions asked. Katsuki, surprisingly, looks away. Dunno. He says, because he doesn't want to say Aizawa is verbally forcing me, because if I leave, you'll fall unconscious again. Okay. Izuku shrugs, like that's any kind of an answer. It's not long after that before All Might arrives. He slides open the door gently. Hello. I am here, with really terrible news. He says with a sour face, not much like his usual self. Izuku jumps. Terrible news. What is it? He notes the way Katsuki huffs and stares at the floor. Like he knows something. What is it, Kaken? I wondered why you would sit with me so long. Is it because I'm dying? All Might laughs, not dying, Midoriya, no. But Bakugo might be. Shut your trap. This isn't funny. Katsuki spits, the loudest he's been since Aizawa left. In fact, he hasn't said much at all since Aizawa left. You're dying. Why? Izuku asks with no sense of urgency. Like he's carrying on a metaphor. All Might wouldn't laugh if he were serious. Because I'm going to kill myself, that's why. Bakugo, All Might chides, but he smiles nonetheless. Could it be that he found this situation laughable? It's true. Tell him what you've got to tell him and watch him kill himself, too. Katsuki says flatly. Kaken. What's going on? Izuku tenses, eyes darting back and forth between the moody student in the chair beside him, and the giggling teacher in the chair opposite him. Look, Midoriya, All Might begins, regaining seriousness. Your fever is what we would call a quirk-induced fever. Basically, a quirk is making you sick. My quirk. Izuku shudders, thinking about all the horrors that would bring to him. Not your quirk, no, another student's. Do you remember Manami from class 3C, All Might asks. Izuku mumbled to himself, repeating the name over and over again. Oh, the girl who bumped into me. Katsuki feels himself tensing and shifting while he waits for All Might to tell him straight. Like peeling open a flower bud that holds a bee. Every moment Izuku acts fine and every moment All Might doesn't spit it out makes him more and more uncomfortable. Yes, that's the one. All Might gulps before he continues. Well, I haven't the strength to make this simple, so I'll tell you straight up. The girl hit you with her quirk by accident when she bashed into you. Usually, that wouldn't be a big deal, but she's on vacation in Europe for 2 weeks, and so you're going to have to deal with the side effects of the quirk until she's back to fix it. Izuku furrows his brow, unsurprisingly more concerned with the working of her quirk than his own illness. So, I'll be sick like this until she's back. How does she use a quirk like that in combat, because the affects of the quirk took some time to dash, shut up. Katsuki yells, pulling at his hair. Are you insane? Who gives a f about her DMN quirk, all you gotta know is that it's a sentence worse than hell. Izuku, after getting over the initial surprise of Katsuki's loud voice, smiles. I don't mind being sick for a while, I wouldn't call it hell. Seriously. Katsuki raises his brow. Great. Then you don't have to tell him a thing. Katsuki decides, turning to All Might. It's not just a sickness, Midoriya. He counteracts. It's an intense fever that could, under the yet-to-be-specified conditions, land you up with some serious physical damage. Really? Some quirk. Izuku says, ever calm. What are the conditions, then? As All Might opens his mouth, Katsuki interjects. Look, you heard the nerd, he's totally fine with a little sickness. He's been through worse than a fever. Let the idiot have his free will and don't say a DMN word. Izuku squints. Thanks, Kaken, but I do want to know. Katsuki only lets out a furious scoff. Well, the conditions of the quirk, and where it becomes useful for Manami, is that the further the distance from her the worse the fever becomes. Say, if she were in Europe, you would probably end up just dying. Izuku, on little information, jumps out of his skin. So I am going to die. He squeals. No, All Might lets out a breathy laugh. The affects of the quirk aren't tied to Manami like they usually are. You see, for the quirk to work, you need to speak to her directly after physical contact. Kinda like Shinso who you went up against in the sports festival. However, unlike Shinso, the affects of the quirk will tie to anyone you speak to. So, Izuku begins to clarify. If Manami touches me, and then I speak to someone, I'll be sick if I don't stick around them. You got it. All Might says, focusing more on Izuku's quick thinking, rather than the growing paleness of his face. There's a long, peculiar hesitance from Izuku. Please tell me Kaken really was just worried about me, he says nervously. Katsuki shuts his eyes in a childish attempt to disappear. Now, All Might mutters meekly. That was the terrible news. Izuku is let out of care a day later, considering the fact his ailment is a result of distance rather than actual illness. But regardless of being let out, he was still sick. Katsuki wanted nothing to do with him, and Izuku was going to have to find a way around it if he were to suffer these next 2 weeks. Miraculously, on the forefront of his mind was dissecting the workings of the quirk. Izuku scribbled in his beaten notebook symptoms like a doctor would. He wrote how it felt to be let out of the medical room, all headaches and fever and off balance. Then, as quietly as he could, he wrote how marvelously better he felt simply sitting behind Katsuki in class. There was around a meter distance between them, and Izuku couldn't believe how his symptoms were practically gone. However, as the class was dismissed and Katsuki, with speed akin to Ida, dashed from the room, he was sorrowful to note how quickly his ailment came back. He choked on air the moment Katsuki left his side, and alerted Ida. Midoriya, might I suggest that if you are still unwell, you rest in the dormitories instead? Ida offers. I don't know, Izuku shrugs complacently. It would be a pain trying to explain his real situation. I don't really feel that bad, actually. It's not like you to lie, Midoriya. Ida says factually, without even a question to if Izuku was lying. Izuku only laughs. Well, you got me. But I think I'll struggle if I miss out on work. Ida, ever caring and pedantic about these things, shakes a disapproving head. All right, but I must say, I think it's a foolish idea. Thanks, Ida. When lunch rolled around, Izuku urgently sought out Katsuki. He was running a temperature, and occasionally his vision spotted. In order to expand the knowledge he had of Minami's quirk, the more practical study he needed to put in. The less he found himself tripping over his own shoes and wobbling about when still, the closer he had to be to Katsuki. In the cafeteria, he could think clearly. He had to be near. It didn't take long for the loud laugh of Denki Kaminari to give away his hiding spot. There were a few flashes and cries from a table in the cafeteria, and Izuku caught sight of the blonde he had been searching for. One last trip and wobble, and he marches right up to the table. Denki was, as you'd imagine, torturing the table attendants with his photography. Hey, Midoriya. Got any lunch? You can take a seat. Denki called warmly. Izuku found comfort in the fact his classmates were so welcoming, never had someone said something like that to him in junior school. Oh, no thanks, Kaminari. I actually just need to speak to Kaken quickly. Izuku said, trying to stay as ordinary as he could be, but he watched the way Katsuki unusually stiffed beside him. For real. Okay, but get him to stand up. I'll take a picture for you too. Maybe I'll put it in the UA newsletter. Denki said mindlessly. Katsuki didn't even bother reacting. That was never happening. Kaken, Izuku starts when Katsuki doesn't make any effort to stand, skin cooling as he came close enough to touch him. Can we talk a minute? Katsuki swallows his large mouthful of spicy noodles and then turns to look at Izuku. No, actually. Kaken. He begs. I have a plan. He says, vague and intriguing. Izuku doesn't miss the way the table's heads turn. Or the way Denki clutches his camera. Katsuki stills. A plan. Yeah. Don't make this harder than it is. I'm trying to help you. Izuku offers, as if this is somehow worse for Katsuki than it is for him. Fine, Katsuki gives in after a moment of consideration. Make it quick. The walk to the training hall is nothing short of blissful. For the first time since Katsuki left him in the medical room, Izuku feels like he can breathe. His head doesn't ache and his limbs aren't sore. There's not a constant threat of vomiting. Who knew Katsuki's presence could ever be so relaxing? What's your dumb plan, nerd? Katsuki groans as they walk into the facility. It was empty, save for them, and that's what Izuku needed for his $1 million idea. Okay, remember yesterday when I totally collapsed? Izuku begins bluntly. Aha. Well, we were like super far from each other. But the school building, and the dorms, aren't as big as Ground Zero. What I think we should do is, Izuku trails off as he places two hands on Katsuki's shoulders, pushing him into the space just before the line of the arena. He doesn't ignore how soothing touching Katsuki is, like water in a desert. This quirk was truly fascinating. Stay there. And I'll slowly walk back until I think I'm gonna drop. That way, we'll know how far is too far. Sound good? Any distance is too far. Katsuki groans, but he doesn't make any effort to defy the plan. He stands, hands in pockets, waiting for Izuku to walk. Okay, let's see. Izuku mutters to himself as he steps, back to Katsuki, further and further away from him. He's about 3 meters before he's hit with a wave of nausea. Oh, wow. He says. Shocked at the suddenness, and takes a breath in. Okay. He continually notes his findings as he walks, save him forgetting them. 1, 2, 3 more meters and he feels a wobble in his step. When he stops to take it in, he's not incapacitated yet. And so Izuku walks in this way for a while, growing Katsuki to impatience. Get over yourself and walk faster. I don't have the time for this. Izuku rolls his eyes at his safe distance and mumbles something negative about him. He picks up his pace, regardless, and stops at around 25 meters. His forehead is noticeably warmer and he feels lightheaded. For the first time, he feels like he'll struggle to go on. Despite this, Izuku carries on, legs moving out of will over want. There's a bout of illness surging in his stomach, a threat that he'll throw up, and he puts a hand to his mouth to avoid that. Once he reaches 40 meters, he's seriously worried about himself. He writes, however, in shaky font, that 40 meters is seriously bad, and turns back to look at Katsuki. Katsuki is, however, mortified. Keep going, but. He yells. That is way to close. Izuku, unwilling but ever so slightly guilty, continues to scale the facility. Once he gets to 50 meters, he wobbles so bad he falls over. The impact of his nauseous body on the ground sends pain up his spine. His head aches so badly it could burst out of his soul. In these moments, he wants to kill Katsuki. It's selfish for him to make him go on. But Izuku stands so unsteady he nearly falls again. Until, he does. Only his vision starts to spot and blue, and an unsettling ringing takes over his hearing. He feels the smack on the ground, his whole left side bashed into the dirt, but his body gives out after then. 50 meters and Izuku will faint. Katsuki is unusually horrified when he sees Izuku drop to the floor. For a moment, he debates walking over, and then thinks over the story Aizawa would fabricate for him if anyone found out he had left Izuku unconscious in the gym. Something sinister and incriminating. So he starts, slowly and then quickly, over to Izuku. He's as you would imagine, knocked out and in the dirt, and Katsuki rolls him onto his back with his shoe before kneeling down next to him. Izuku is flush, worryingly flush, and he looks similar to the way he did the day before in Ground Zero. If Katsuki wasn't completely enraged with this situation, he'd feel a little concerned. Deku. He prompts, poking his pink cheek. It's hot. Can you get up? Katsuki asks, but when Izuku doesn't stir, he's out of options. But there's a nervous curiosity within Katsuki to see how dramatic Izuku is really being. With a reluctant hand, Katsuki pushes away the hair on Izuku's head, flattening his hand on his forehead. It's warm, really warm, and nothing short of concerning. Izuku's soft green hair spills over the top of Katsuki's hand, concealing it within Izuku's illness. There's no sound after Katsuki holds his breath, only the small, jagged noises of Izuku taking in air. Katsuki has never felt so calm in his life. And then Izuku starts to stir, raising a hand to his head. Katsuki abandons his own touch rapidly before Izuku can truly realize what he was doing. There's some pained noises of waking up, and Izuku begins to open his eyes. Get up. Katsuki says coldly, and Izuku starts to smile at the familiarity of it. Man, he groans, voice hoarse and rough. That really hurt. Izuku sits himself up and dusts off what he can of his uniform. He finally looks over to Katsuki, who is sporting a signature scowl. So, 50 meters. Katsuki huffs. Great. Chapter 3 After their disturbing discovery in the school gym, Izuku and Katsuki learnt to keep a safe distance from each other. 50 meters was the limit, and Katsuki would be set on keeping it that way until Manami returned. So, for the next few days, Izuku was kept at a distance. He was around, of course, on the table nearest to Katsuki at lunch, or the chair 3 feet away during assemblies. He never left Katsuki's sight in order to save him from passing out, but there was a reluctance to actually speak to him that wasn't there before. Izuku knew this whole situation was probably making Katsuki tense, and therefore he opted to suffer his persistent fever in favor of keeping the peace. One morning, while Izuku trudged to school, 100 feet away from Katsuki, Aizawa found himself in step alongside him. Oh! Izuku jumps as his teacher made himself visible. You're early to class. He says light-heartedly. Well, I wanted to see how you were getting on. I can't imagine it's been easy for you. Aizawa comments, a stern squinted gaze pointed at the back of Katsuki's head. You're not walking with Bakugo. Izuku can't conceal his cough, and lets out a wet and gurgled noise that only arouses complete concern for him. Well, we realize the fever isn't that bad from around a 30-meter distance, so there's no reason to be close, you know. But, Aizawa stops walking just before they reach the 1A door. You could be completely well if you stood beside him. Isn't that a better deal? Izuku, with a lack of better words, only sighs. You know how he is. Aizawa takes a minute to contemplate, but at the end of the day, he does know how Katsuki is. Alright, but don't let him make you any worse. Izuku grins. I won't. They, alongside the other piling students, walk into class and find their respected seats. Izuku favors this part of the day, as it's the closest he gets to be to Katsuki. The desk is the only factor to separate them, and Izuku is immediately relieved at the very presence of Katsuki. As Aizawa speaks, he begins to feel his headache reside. Something to note in his lengthy analysis, the headache is always the first to go. As Aizawa explains the schedule for the day, Izuku finds himself lost to the birds outside. He spent a lot of time while in medical observing the scenery outside. It was nearing summer, and everything had a joyful air about it. Well, everything besides him. There was nothing positive about the situation he found himself in. If it had been anyone else, he might have been able to rule it out to mildly inconvenient, for other people are a lot more understanding than Katsuki. But Izuku had been lumped with Katsuki of all people, and that boy was set on making everything he did hell. Izuku could already see the way he tensed his shoulders, stiff and irritable. When something is bugging Katsuki, it'll ruin his whole day. He's been like that since they were kids, always incredibly sensitive. It never used to bother Izuku, but now it did. It surged guilt in his stomach alongside the nausea. Whatever small bonds between them he was holding onto are going to be lost and burnt by the time the 2 weeks are over. There's only so much Katsuki can handle. At least, that's what Izuku has come to know. When Aizawa instructs the class to stand, Izuku is a little flustered. It's not like him to lose focus, but Aizawa can hardly blame him for not concentrating. There's a lot on his mind. What's happening? Izuku whispers, leaning back to speak to Mineta. Either him or Katsuki, and he knows who'd rather answer him. We're going to ground beta. Don't know why though. Mineta mumbles back. Lined up and suited in their hero costumes, the students wait for Aizawa to explain the lesson. He was discussing something with All Might, who had joined the lesson for the day, but Izuku couldn't shake the feeling they were talking about him. Not to mention the glances Aizawa continued to give him. Hey, Deku. Ochako gleams. She waved high and excitedly. If it's partnered work, do you want to team up? She grins. Oh, Izuku stammers, still not used to having a female friend. Yeah, I'd like that. Great. Aizawa clears his throat and the class begin to quiet. Under full attention, he begins to explain what is intended for the training session. Today, I want you to practice your rescue abilities. After the licensing exam, it's come to my attention that some of you are better suited to rescue than others, but to be heroes, you all need to be perfect. After the unsettling exposure, he continues. I'll be sorting you into groups of 2 or 3 based on how you performed in the exam. For example, Bakugo, who failed completely, will make a good match for both Midoriya and Uraraka, who show a skill in rescue. Katsuki scoffs, but doesn't object. To the naked eye, he might seem offended, but Izuku knows why he doesn't object. So does Aizawa. He's not allowed to. Aizawa continues to pair and select people he thinks will work well together. Not only is this a good excuse to keep Katsuki and Izuku close, but it's an important way for people to learn and grow from the mistakes they made in the licensing exam. When the groups are decided, All Might explains the foe scenario. A villain has rampaged the city, trapping innocent civilians, and it's the hero's job to save them all. They are instructed to split up, and return all the injured and lost to the starting point for examination. Ochako has a skip in her step while she walks down the mock street. Man, rescue feels so much better when we're not being watched for our every move. I'm not sure I really did so great under all that pressure. You passed, though. I guess that's what matters most. Izuku offers helpfully. He jumps when he hears a fake wailing. Is that a victim? We should check it out. Ochako springs to action, followed by a ready Izuku. His occasional sneezing had Ochako looking over her shoulder, pitiful grimace alerting her concern. There's a small boy trapped under some rubble when they find the source of the wailing, and Katsuki scoffs. Anyone could get themselves out of that. He mutters. Kaken. Izuku warns. Are you okay? Please, don't cry. We've come to help you. Ochako soothes as she kneels before the scene. It's a little awkward to roleplay in this way, and Katsuki finds it completely below him. Ochako begins to float the stray pieces of building away from the actor, and casts them off to the side. Are you injured? Izuku asks helpfully, trying his best to smile. I think I've broken my arm. The child, doing a splendid job at pretending, chokes out between further wailing. Oh. Izuku flinches before suddenly correcting his posture. Don't worry. We'll get you to the medical bay and you'll be perfectly fine. Katsuki rubs his tired eyes. F hell. He groans. This is so stupid. Bakugo. Ochako whisper yells. Be nice. She says, with an impossibly stern face. Her pink cheeks and big eyes don't make her all that scary, though. Katsuki rolls his eyes, a mean and sour face forming under his mask. To who? That F actor. I'll be nice when someone actually dash. He's cut short as Izuku elbows him in the rib. Pretend, but. Izuku remarks. Katsuki looks away. Izuku can be so horrible. Stupid idiot. The three of them, with slightly uneven rolls, in which Katsuki does nothing, bring the boy to the medical area. Ochako holds him, slightly levitating him above her arms to try and soothe him better. He continues to cry and wail like a good actor would, and Izuku jumps along with simple words of encouragement. You're doing so well. He gleams, trying to convince himself that this boy has actually injured himself badly. Katsuki grates his teeth together behind them, arms weighed down at his side by his gauntlets. He's not a particularly comforting person, and he doesn't look so sweet either. He's like a scary dog, banished to the back to keep him from attacking people. He stiffens in anger when he hears a new cry for help. Oh, is that another person? Izuku thinks out loud. You and Bakugo go on and look for them, I'll rush this boy back. Ochako decides, starting faster on her way back. Izuku nods firmly. Come on, Kaken. He calls. Katsuki SCKS in a breath. Just my luck. The woman, this time, is stuck atop a building. From the position the two have on the floor, she doesn't look injured, only distressed. Hello. Just wait there, we're going to save you. Izuku calls from below as the woman frantically paces from side to side. Can't she just take the stairs? Katsuki mumbles. I don't know, Kaken. Stop being so moody. Izuku groans as he charges up his body. His legs spark with green embers before he leaps up to the roof of the building. Katsuki waits around, kicking stones, unwilling to do much else. Rescue isn't part of why he wants to be a hero. That and he's just super bad at it. He cranes his head up to watch Izuku. The sun blinds him slightly and he covers his eyes with his glove's hand. From what he can see, Izuku is holding the woman's hands meekly, asking if she's alright. She pretends to freak out, but what she's saying is unheard. Katsuki finds the whole situation impossibly stupid, but his being presents a feeble respect for Izuku. He always puts 100% into every task. Katsuki starts to feel a little shy when he reflects on his own posture. Izuku is actually better than him at this. And that is horrible. Deku. He yells impatiently. Bring her down, you're just freaking her out more. Izuku starts to stir, and he encourages the woman to stay still so he can get her down. His immediate thoughts are to jump from the roof with her, but in her skittish state that would probably terrify her. Instead, Izuku leads her to the stairwell and helps her down the stories. She's hard to move and harder to encourage, but once they make it down she begins to stop shaking. I'm scared of heights. She mutters, putting on fake relief. Izuku gives her a wobbly smile. Well, don't fear. You're on the ground now. Do you want us to guide you to the medical bay? Izuku grins, trying his best to imitate All Might. The woman shakes her head. No, I'm not hurt. She explains. Well, go anyway. Katsuki scoffs. They have water and stuff. Where on earth else were you planning to go? The woman flinches. Home. She pretends. This place is a dump. Just go to the medical bay. It's, like, safer. Katsuki mutters, trying to be nice. The wide, stupid grin Izuku is giving him makes his wording falter a bit. You're probably right. The woman shrugs. Well, you can tag along with Aoyama over there. He has a citizen and is probably on his way. Izuku suggests, and waves the woman away as she begins to leave. Safe travels. A silence took over after her footsteps fell out of earshot. Izuku turns to Katsuki with the same grin. That was good. Kind of. He congratulates. Everything I do is good. Hey, guys. Ochako calls before Izuku has an opportunity to answer. She rushes over with hurried step and shortness of breath. I was looking for you. A team needs to stay together. She smiles. Whatever, pink cheeks. I'm sick of this exercise, so team it up together. Katsuki complains, starting off down the street. Izuku jumps when he notices Katsuki is leaving him. Can a guy get more selfish? Izuku, without thinking, reaches out a hand and grabs Katsuki's arm. There's a wave of relief that surges through his body, one that points out just how awful he was feeling before. He tightens his grip for just a second, a fleeting and futile attempt at showing Katsuki how badly he needed him to stay. But Katsuki shrugs his arm free, scowl growing on his face. Stay, Kaken. You need to stay. Izuku sputters, conscious of Ochako beside him and not yet willing to tell her the truth. Because, Aizawa will be angry if you run from the team. Katsuki, picking up on every subliminal message, shuts his eyes irritably. Maybe I don't care about Aizawa. Or you. Well, that would be selfish, wouldn't it? Because we need you to help us. Izuku gulps. Haven't you ever thought of just helping yourself? Izuku flinches. Well, that's not how it works, Kaken. He says, voice beginning to raise. Do you guys want me to leave? Ochako starts before Katsuki interrupts her. Maybe I don't want to follow you around. Katsuki remarks, louder than Izuku. Maybe you don't get a DMN choice. Izuku hardly says DMN because he believes it's a useless filler word, but when he wants to get an angry point across, he finds himself acting the way Katsuki does. In that way, he balls his fists and bares his teeth, trying to copy the boy before him. I can do whatever I want. If you're too DMN weak to handle a fever, don't blame me. Fever. Ochako flinches. Kaken, how can you always be so selfish? It's not like you have to stay close. But if you start running off, you're just going to kill me. Katsuki wants to reply, wants to shout until Izuku understands he's not some caretaker, but the pained look on Ochako's face stops him short. She looks puzzled, ping her head to the side as she watches Izuku. What are you guys fighting about? Stay out of it. Katsuki spits. Really, he wants her to leave. Something about her knowing, her understanding that Izuku needs to rely on Katsuki, makes him feel a little queasy. Izuku breathes unsteadily, silent anger prevalent in the tone of his air. He's frowning when Katsuki looks at him. You're right. Fine. He says. Izuku isn't one to give up, but he learned a long time ago that no matter how structured the argument, to Katsuki he would always be wrong. He turns, a little too sharply for his condition, and starts on down the street like Katsuki moments before. He wobbles after 3 meters, just like his notebook says. Deku. Katsuki says, not particularly desperately or loudly. He wonders if Ochako even heard him. I'm probably in the wrong, aren't I? He asks Ochako. Definitely. It's evening when Katsuki next sees Izuku, and the signs of distance are plastered over his face. Izuku is pale, paler than usual, and his hair is sweaty and ruffled. His cheeks are an unusual shade of red, and he constantly barks out loud and ugly coughs. He's seriously sick. Ida sits opposite him on the common room table. He's holding a bag of ice, guarding a glass of water and tablets of various kinds. He's saying something grave, hand pointed in the stern way it always is when he's trying to be convincing. Katsuki only really hears Ida once he's standing behind him. I think it would be remarkably foolish for you to attend class in this state, Midoriya. You are far too unwell to participate in any form of learning. I have your best interests at heart. Ida says, however it all sounds like strict commands. Would you like me to make you something to eat before you rest? Izuku, watching Katsuki as he lurks behind Ida like an evil shadow, shakes his head gently. Any more force and he'd worsen his throbbing headache. Don't worry about it, Ida. But thanks for helping. If you won't eat, will you please take some form of medication? I don't understand you when you say you don't actually need it. Ida throws up mock speech bubbles as he quotes Izuku. Katsuki is finally ready to talk. Move it, 4 eyes. I need to talk. He says unsophisticatedly. Bakugo, I am trying to help Midoriya. Ida complains. And I know what's best for him, so scram. Ida shares a helpless glance with Izuku, but when Izuku shrugs his shoulders complacently, he understands there's nothing he can do. Fine. But don't encourage him into bad habits, Bakugo. He needs rest. I know what he needs, DMN it. You're not a doctor. Katsuki spits. After a moment of contemplation, Ida leaves. He too understands that Katsuki is always right. Katsuki pulls out the chair Ida had tucked away as he left and pushes away the mess of medication on the table. What is this stuff? Izuku shrugs. He's sweet and kind and lovable, but also impossibly petty. He shuts his mouth like the safe of a bank. Katsuki knows what he's doing immediately and groans loudly. Get over yourself. I actually came to have a civil conversation. Katsuki watches Izuku look away, rolling his tongue on the inside of his cheek. Small, but evident, is the beginning of a smirk. Wipe that stupid look off your face and speak to me, or I'll blow up your Bronze Age holographic All Might card. Katsuki says firmly. You wouldn't dare. Izuku says, feigning horror. Katsuki shrugs. You're right, but you're speaking. So listen. You force me to speak just so that I can listen. Kaken, you are just impossible. Izuku says sarcastically. Not funny. Katsuki says, and he grimaces when Izuku starts to cough. It's sore and raspy. It sounds as though the noise is being pulled from his throat like the soles of your shoes on gravel. How long have you been ill? Katsuki says disgustedly. Ever since you abandoned me this morning. So, like 9 hours. Izuku's words are said lightly, but there's a bountiful pool of truth in all of it. I didn't abandon you. You stalked off like a loser. Katsuki defends himself. Whatever. What's this civil conversation you talk of? I don't think I know the term. Izuku continues to parade his sarcastic string of remarks. He knows they make Katsuki annoyed. It's not like he didn't learn it from him. I'm serious. I think that well, logically I think, and not because of. Katsuki stumbles over his own words, picking and choosing what he wants to say and what he needs to. It's a thin line. I just think it's probably not right that you're actually ill all the time. Probably. Izuku deadpans. Katsuki ignores that. So, I think we should, I don't know, draw up some rules. Rules. Izuku continues to say flatly, eyebrows creasing slightly. Well, not rules. I don't know. But Aizawa and All Might are going to be super sad if they find out I keep ditching you, so I guess I've got to do something. Katsuki mutters, teeking out loud. After a while of somber contemplation, Izuku replies. I don't know what you mean. Are you, like, not going to keep me at a 10-meter distance? Because I'm still sick at 10 meters. He reminds him. No. Well, yeah. Katsuki contradicts himself. I think you should probably, I don't know. Stick around. Like this. Izuku looks at the space between them. Hardly over a meter. It would be nice, staying this close. Already his headache is soothing. You mean? What, exactly? Well, you can sit next to me. Seriously. I can't believe this fortune has been passed on to me. Please, oh please, write this down save you forget what you've blessed me with. Izuku chants mockingly. He even rests the back of his hand on his fevered head theatrically. I'm getting sick of your smart mouth, nerd. I'm serious. Katsuki says flatly. At lunch, after hours. You should probably be closer than you are. If you're feeling sick at 10 meters, then. Katsuki trails off, unbothered to finish his own sentences. Izuku starts to giggle. So, what? You'll let me sit with you at lunch? Is that all you've ever dreamed of? Katsuki says mockingly. But not in the kindly mocking way that Izuku adopts. And more. Izuku scoffs as he rolls his eyes. After a while, he realizes Katsuki is out of words and sighs. He still feels sick, being away from Katsuki for so long has to have some damaging affects, but his body is starting to soothe. Thanks, Kaken. That would be nice. I'm not really enjoying this fever. Does it SCK? More than anything. Katsuki finds himself looking away. He feels guilt, maybe. Well, 2 weeks isn't that long. You just have to SCK it up and stop being a total idiot. Izuku breathes out a laugh. I'll try. Chapter 4 Izuku had never much had a problem with sitting on his own. After a while, he began to delight in it. In junior school, if Izuku could be left alone for a whole lunch PRD, it felt like a dream. When he started at UA, it was fundamentally shocking that he had so many people that wanted to sit with him. To hang out with him. And for the most part, he couldn't be happier. But one lunch mission he had never been able to succeed was sitting with Katsuki. Katsuki ate a lot, Izuku realizes as he shuffles awkwardly in the cafeteria booth. It was just like any other day, except his dream, second to becoming a hero, third to meeting All Might, fourth to getting his hands on the limited edition 80s All Might poster, of sitting with his childhood friend at lunch was coming true. Katsuki swallows a large gulp of rice before he finally broke the silence. What is with you? Katsuki says, dropping his chopsticks firmly into his bowl. Izuku stammers. Nothing, nothing. He tries to smile. I thought being next to me was supposed to make you normal. You're still acting like a freak. Katsuki spits, eyes furrowed in irritation. Why are you just sitting and watching me? Don't you have any lunch? Izuku looks down at his empty portion of the table, starkly contrasting Katsuki's, who is enjoying rice and soda and vegetables and noodles. I don't know. I didn't get around to buying anything. He shrugs. Katsuki stares blankly at him. How on earth do you put on muscle if you don't eat, nerd? He asks, voice lowering an octave that suggests he's actually asking. I do eat. Izuku gulps, and it was true. There was plenty of reasons Izuku didn't have any lunch on him, however. I was so excited we got to sit next to each other that it slipped my mind. And I didn't want to waste time buying anything, I'd rather just sit and watch you. Also, all this nausea is making it hard to feel very hungry. Really? Katsuki asks. Izuku grins. Yeah, I love eating. No, all the nausea is ruining your appetite. Katsuki frowns unkindly. It's more like a paternal scolding. And you just like watching me. Don't you freak yourself out. If I said dodgy SHT like you do I'd probably tape my mouth shut. Izuku sighs and sits back in the booth. No use in defending himself, and Katsuki probably knew all of that anyway. Man, he has got to stop mumbling. I think of it more as abusing my freedom of expression. Yeah, you're certainly abusing it. Chewing up your freaky words and spitting them out like a nerd. Izuku knits his brow. What does that even mean? Kaken of the Bakugos. A familiar voice bellows from one end of the booth. And who do we have here? I can't believe it. Pose you too. Denki grins like a kid, holding up his rusty camera and pointing it in their faces. Put that DMN thing away before I pawn it. Katsuki says flatly, picking up his full sugar coke. Denki rolls his eyes. You'll pose, right Midoriya? I want to document the first time you're allowed to sit with us. Izuku smiles wide and lets Denki take his picture. He was never much photogenic, so he hoped his now frequent photos turned out okay. The group squished into the booth they always sat at and turned all eyes to Midoriya. They set out their various lunches and swarmed him. So, Midoriya, how did you get Bakugo to let you sit? We've been asking for months to have you here. Mina begins, smiling wide and taking one of Izuku's hands. You have. Yeah, totally. I just love watching you two interact. Mina grins. Then, she winks. What subliminal message was Izuku not picking up on? That's probably the weirdest F thing you've ever said. Katsuki spits, rolling his eyes. Well, I don't know. Ida is working. And Uraraka sat with, Tsu today. And, well I guess I couldn't find Todoroki. So, I just asked. Izuku curates a string of decent lies. He didn't know why he felt the urge to lie, after deliberating he decided he didn't mind if people knew. But Katsuki didn't like it, and so he'd keep his mouth shut. Really? That's great. That's so nice of Bakugo to say yes. Mina smiles to herself. When Denki starts to giggle, and Katsuki shoots him a horrifying glare, Izuku truly believes there is something he's missing. So, like, Denki starts, voice wobbling as if he can't hold back a laugh. How long have you two dash? Katsuki throws his empty can at Denki's head. Yeah, Izuku was totally missing something. Say another F word and I'll burn the camera. Katsuki says coldly, with some haste. Izuku grows to feel very awkward. He would, though, sitting with this group. He didn't often do so. He's only kidding, Bakubro. You know he likes to joke. Kirishima says idly, looking to Izuku with a nervous gait. Izuku gulps thickly. Well, Izuku starts, unaware on how he'd finish his sentence. He just wanted to move on. Why do you hate Kaminari's camera so much? You had a similar one when we were younger. Izuku says with a smile in Katsuki's direction. He's wonderfully unaware of how angry this makes Katsuki. For real. Denki gleams. No. Yeah, you did. It was green, though. Not black. Izuku continues, dodging past any indicator Katsuki gives him to stop. Why'd you stop? You were really good at photography. Izuku says mindlessly. Bakugo liked photography. Shiro asks. Yeah. Up until we were, 12. Izuku shrugs. We would go out into the forest when we were little and take pictures of beetles that actually. We never did that. Izuku suddenly contradicts himself when he looks to Katsuki, whose eyes are squinted in what can only be described as rage. Man, I like having you on the table, Mina grins. We get to hear so many fun stories. What about the story of when you slipped on your own acid and gave yourself a concussion? Katsuki offers with a malice-laced tone. Kirishima barks out a laugh. Oh, yeah. That was hilarious. Izuku winces. You really did that? He asks painfully. Yeah, Mina sighs. I couldn't remember a thing for 3 days. Class was hard, and Kiri had to teach me all of the material I didn't get. The group, in playful spirits, begin to laugh at her. After a while, she laughs too. The only person not laughing is Katsuki, who's staring down at his unfinished food. What's the matter, man? Kirishima asks, not more concerned than curious. Katsuki, surprisingly, looks up at Izuku before he speaks. A fleeting moment of eye contact. Connection. Nothing. You guys were late and lunch is over. He says. Man, really? Shiro groans. I didn't even eat my chips. Don't go on broadcasting adventures with Dunceface when you should be eating, then. Katsuki squints. Now go to class before you somehow get even more effing stupid. Gradually, and in low spirits, the group begin to pack themselves up and head out. They're almost on their way before Kirishima turns back. You coming? He asks Katsuki, and spares a glance to Izuku, who had waited for Katsuki to stand before he did. In a minute. Don't wait for me. He mutters in return. Izuku begins to pee his head. Kirishima is accepting of Katsuki's elusiveness, knowing Katsuki doesn't like meddling, and jogs on to catch up with the rest of the group. Suddenly, as if the whole thing never happened, Katsuki and Izuku are alone again. Idly, Katsuki picks up his chopsticks and swallows what's left of his noodles. Shouldn't we go? If class is starting. Izuku asks cautiously. It's not, Katsuki mumbles, mouth full. Not for a few minutes, anyway. He shrugs, as if it made sense for him to send away his friends prematurely. Then why did you dash? I don't know. Katsuki says before Izuku has a chance to finish, like he didn't want to hear the situation being presented back to him. He fiddles for something in his pocket before pulling out a bar of something sweet. He tosses it, not very gently, at Izuku's chest. There, but. You can't wait until evening to eat, it's stupid. But, you are kind of stupid, so I'm not shocked you would do something dumb like that. Izuku, battling a lack of words, smiles. He picks the treat up from his lap and identifies it as a peanut butter and chocolate protein bar. He likes them, he didn't know Katsuki did. Thanks. But, quickly. I did kind of mean it when I said class was starting soon. Izuku used like independent class work. He liked having the freedom to write whatever he wanted. Sometimes, he found himself to be a little bossy. If people didn't stick to his favorite ideas in a group discussion, he began to grow a little irritated. He was just as bossy as Ida, only he didn't verbalize it. He always preferred working on his own, partly because he thought he could do better alone, but mostly because people didn't used to like to listen to him. Now they did though, and Izuku was warming up to class work. He, Ochako, Ida, and Shoto sit around a round table in the library. The classroom section of the area had been booked for Aizawa's afternoon lesson. A group project, one that wouldn't take longer than a weekend. Each group was given a pro-hero and tasked to devise every weakness they could think of that would limit their quirk. Izuku's group were given Mount Lady. Ida was occupied with drawing a neat-looking table on a large sheet of blank paper. He takes things very seriously, while Ochako suggests they add a wonderfully crafted pink title with her Sakura-themed highlighters. No, you write the letters big and capital with the highlighter, and then in black ink write them again but thin and wavy. She explains. That doesn't sound very professional, or beneficial. Ida remarks, trying to visualize the image Ochako was describing. I think it sounds nice. Shoto offers, putting in his piece. He pulls the paper closer to himself and squints, trying to see what it would look like alongside the table. Mount Lady's costume is purple, though. I have purple. Ochako smiles, fishing in her pencil case for the thick highlighter with tacky purple flowers on it. That's better. Shoto nods. Ida begins to defend his former point when he catches sight of Izuku, who was sitting opposite him. He looked, to Ida, sad. Midoriya. Are you still feeling unwell? Izuku was, to be honest. Though Katsuki was on a table not too far from him, he was still some distance away, and it was hurting his head. Kinda. He says finally, looking away from Katsuki and his group. When he turns, Ochako is frowning. Are you upset about the fight you had with Bakugo yesterday? I never understood what you were talking about. She asks, noticing how Izuku had been looking at him. No. Izuku says evasively. Don't worry, though. We should focus on the project. You fought with Bakugo? Ida asks, brow furrowed. No, it wasn't really a fight. I was just a little irritated with him, but when am I not? Right. Izuku laughs awkwardly. He found personal discussion a little nerve-wracking. Ida continues to meddle. I think you should inform Aizawa if he is treating you unlawfully. It wasn't that big of a deal, he just wanted to leave our group during the rescue exercise. Izuku explains, picking up one of Ochako's cream pencils to distract himself. I just thought he was being a little selfish. But he kept talking about your illness. I mean, did that really have anything to do with it? She asks, unaware that her insistence was beginning to make Izuku feel worse. Well, no. He gulps. What did Bakugo say? Shoto asks idly. About his illness. Izuku, head pounding and throat sore from being 3 meters away from Katsuki, began to grow tired of the conversation quickly. He wasn't that upset, there was only a little thing on his mind. After he hears Ochako begin to explain all she remembers, he puts his fevered forehead onto the table. All sound smothers quickly. Midoriya. Shoto beckons. I totally lied, I'm miserable and it's all Kaken's fault. Izuku groans, sound muffled from his awkward position. He was being dramatic, really, but the sentiment held true. What? Why? Ochako jumps at the sight of Izuku so distressed. Izuku sits up, head reeling from the action, but he smiles. It's nice to have friends that care. If I tell you, can you all promise not to tell a single soul? I don't think Kaken would appreciate it. They all nod firmly. Izuku bites the inside of his cheek and deliberates, confessing. He's got to crack soon, it's now or later. You know how I'm, really sick. He starts. When his audience doesn't talk, he continues. Well, it's because I got hit by a quirk. Midoriya. Did you inform Aizawa? Ida asks hastily. Yeah, he told me in the first place. But, anyway, the quirk is a pretty interesting one, because it makes the victim sick if they're too distant from the user. Which is cool, but it also works for the first person you speak to. Kinda like Shinso's quirk. Which would, in combat, usually be the user. Only instead of speaking to the girl who accidentally hit me, I ended up talking to Bakugo. Ochako finishes with a flinch. Are you serious? Oh my word, that sucks. I know, and that but hates having me around. Izuku sighs deeply, the last strands of his pent-up frustrations leaving his body. And the girl with the quirk is gone for 2 weeks, so I'm stuck like this. I suppose that's why you refused my offer of medication. There's no cure to your sickness, besides Bakugo. Ida thinks out loud. Yup. So screwed. Izuku groans. He sat with me for lunch, though. So, I guess it's not all bad. He did. Ochako asks. I wondered where you'd gone. I can't imagine Bakugo would purposefully make you sick, though. So maybe he will stick around for the next 2 weeks. Maybe he's nervous. Shoto offers. To be around you. Maybe that's why he tried to leave your team. Izuku thinks for a while, eyes squinting. Nervous. You think? It's plausible. You have a difficult relationship, I'm sure he would find your company unnerving. Shoto says blankly. It takes a lot for Izuku not to feel puzzled at that. Ochako giggles at Shoto's bluntness. I think what Todoroki means is that he's probably just not used to being casual with you. Maybe he's just overwhelmed, and that's why he's running. Maybe you're right. Izuku trails off, thinking about the past few days. When he turns, he can see Katsuki talking to Kirishima. He doesn't look alarmed or irritated. He's relaxed in his chair, holding a pen and talking. And then, Kirishima laughs and Katsuki smiles, and Izuku begins to feel a bubbling and unnatural feeling in the core of his stomach. Katsuki is laughing, casual in another person's company. There was a time Katsuki used to laugh at Izuku's jokes. He'd laugh because they weren't funny, and he'd tell Izuku he was lucky to have him around, otherwise no one would ever find him funny. It was a strange compliment, but the sentiment stood. And now, Katsuki avoided him like the plague and laughed at other people's jokes. Did he tell Kirishima not to worry about making other friends, because Katsuki had all he needed? He had told Izuku that. Does he tell other people? Evasively, Izuku tried not to name his surging emotion. It would make him feel worse. But the cold prickle of jealousy pinched his skin, and he knew he was thinking too hard on this. Whatever it is, I'll get it sorted. For now, Mount Lady. Izuku slumps on the common room sofa. There's an idle static of the TV presenting a game show, and Izuku swallows large mouthfuls of toffee popcorn. He almost doesn't notice when Katsuki stands before him, blocking the TV screen. Sit up, idiot, you look lazy. I am lazy. Izuku mutters, before pulling his weight up and spilling some popcorn. Ugh, you're gross. That SHT is stacked with calories. Are you trying to get fat? Katsuki scoffs. He takes a seat on the other end of the yellowish-green sofa and flicks pieces of popcorn out of his area. I love popcorn. Is all Izuku manages for a reply. Well, love something healthy. And did you even eat something for dinner? He grimaces. Yeah, I had like 3 eggs. Izuku answers. He knows his measly meal will get a rise out of Katsuki, and he grins before he hears the obnoxious bellowing from his counterpart. Seriously. Eggs. Do you want your training to go to waste, because if you don't eat enough you'll not put on muscle, only burn fat? How on earth do you plan to support your shitty quirk if you're stick thin? Katsuki refrains from yelling, but his face supports the idea of it. Izuku only laughs. He does actually eat well, on a normal day. Kaken, relax. I lose my appetite when I'm sick. And don't ignore the popcorn. Izuku adds, shaking his calorific bag in the air. Katsuki, surprisingly, hesitates. So. What, you're blaming me? He says blankly. Izuku coughs on the popcorn he swallows. No, Kaken. He giggles. It's not your fault I'm sick or anything. And it's not like you can spend all dash, okay, quit it. I don't wanna know. Katsuki says abruptly, favoring the static of the TV over Izuku's ramblings. Izuku scoffs, swallowing another handful of popcorn. Alright. There's a manufactured silence that drapes over them, and for lack of better actions, Izuku turns back to the TV. The show host yells a large sum of 8 million yen before panning his hand toward a screen playing a short money animation. Whoa, 8 million. Izuku whispers. He watches a little while longer, seeing a woman scream for oi as fake notes pile down on her, indicating she's won. But, when Izuku looks back, Katsuki is watching him, instead. What is it, Kaken? Katsuki squints. Is there something up with you? He asks plainly. Something up. You acted a little extra weird today. Like, I could confidently call you a freak. Katsuki complains. You seemed so skittish, at lunch. But you're friends with everyone, right? Izuku nods slowly, putting away his popcorn on the coffee table. Lunch. Izuku says as he leans back in the sofa, not anticipating a reply. I don't know, I was just out of place is all. Out of place, that's weird, Deku. Katsuki pulls a sour face. Well, I don't know. I just. Yeah. I don't think you can, yeah, but so tell me what you really mean. Katsuki furrows his brow in what could only be irritation. Maybe he didn't care, or maybe everything he did was tainted in frustration. Despite all they've been through, Izuku wasn't able to tell. Slowly, Katsuki's face falls. It's a soft and gradual decline, but evident. Is that him letting his guard down? Does he care? You, well, Kaminari was. I don't know, laughing. Izuku says aloud, feeling sheepish at the stupidity of it. When is that idiot not laughing? Katsuki says. Izuku shrugs, turning in on himself. His breath feels heavy in his lungs. It wasn't much of a secret, but Izuku had always felt with anxiety. He was a nervous kid, skittish and paranoid, and had to begin taking medication from the age of 6. Katsuki's relentless mockery never helped, and finding out he was quirkless threw him off the deep end. But slowly, with the help of a UA counselor and an up in his dosage, Izuku was beginning to feel content with himself again. But when he's sitting at a lunch table he doesn't know if he's welcome at, and those around him are sharing a hidden laugh, and Katsuki is glaring at him, he can't help but feel like he's the butt of some stupid joke. Were they mocking him? Did they think it was totally stupid he was sitting there? Was he still that same, quirkless kid that sticks out wherever he goes? Does everyone still hate him? It's a quick and detrimental decline, but the very essence of an anxious brain. Thoughts grow more severe as they multiply, and Izuku finds himself like Alice in the rabbit hole, falling and falling until he's totally unaware on what the truth was. It's irrational, for the most part, and Izuku knows that his brain is a little more sensitive than others. And, weirdly, Katsuki does too. They weren't laughing at you. He says idly, eyes darting back to the TV screen because he's never been able to look someone in the eye when he's being earnest. They were laughing, but not at you. At me, actually. It's a dumb joke they've got about me, and, I don't know. It's just dumb. Izuku widens his eyes as he watches Katsuki spit out words that sound somehow sweet. He's growing at the TV, but Izuku knows he's only trying to look tough. It makes him smile. A joke about you. Yeah, that yellow dunce face has some joke that he likes to make. It's about me, but, I guess you, too. That's why they were laughing. So don't freak out, nerd. An honest attempt, but the dragged explanation begins to make Izuku feel worse. Me. So they are laughing at me. Is it because I sat with you today? Maybe you should tell them why I was really there, so they don't think I'm just desperate to be their friends, or something. He rambles, words growing more wobbled as he blurts out his anxieties. Shut up. Katsuki groans. You guys are already friends. They're just taking the PSS out of me, so stop freaking out. Izuku frowns. But you said I was a part of the joke. Katsuki lets out an irritated noise. He finally looks back. Izuku has a strangled look on his face, like someone's telling him his family are dying. He'd always been bad at discerning how extreme things really are. You are. But it's not a bad thing. Can't you just trust me? It's not a bad joke. Can you tell me what it is? No. Katsuki looks away again. So that means it's awful. He groans. No, it's just. You're such a nerd. It's just. Embarrassing. It's an embarrassing joke, okay. And I don't want to tell you. Katsuki huffs, crossing his arms petulantly. Embarrassing. For you. Unnaturally, Katsuki feels his cheeks pink. He looks stupid. Yeah, so. Can it? Izuku waits a moment, pursing his lips like a dam holding back water. Eventually, he can't hold it, and barks out a mocking giggle. Kaken, why are you making that face? What face? Katsuki spits. You're red. How embarrassing is this? I'm not, but. You're pink. Izuku laughs. When was the last time I saw you blush? Never, because I'm not. I said drop it, so get on with it, shitty nerd. Katsuki raised his voice a little. His tone is laced with hesitance. Izuku finds it hysterical. Oh my gosh, please tell me what the joke is. F off. Katsuki spits, folding his arms tighter over his chest defensively. Izuku frowns mockingly. Come on, how is it that they get to know some silly secret of yours and I don't? Maybe because they're my friends. Katsuki knits his brow. There's a loud snap as Katsuki cuts the string of whimsy. Izuku flinches, that stinging sensation of jealousy creeping through his bones. He tries to laugh, but it comes out as a breathy, strangled noise. Right, Izuku says. His voice sounds as wobbly as it did when he listed his anxieties. It's noticeable. Yeah. Well, don't worry about telling me if you're embarrassed. I was only kidding. Katsuki feels pained, but he doesn't look it. Okay, nerd. Izuku, disgustingly aware of how Katsuki's face doesn't falter, clears his throat. Well, isn't it part your bedtime? He giggles with no sense of joy from before. It's mine, anyway. So, I'll, see you, round. Katsuki looks away. Probably. Izuku nods sharply, sitting up and brushing himself off. Cool. His footsteps sound like bullets as they fade into the far distance. Katsuki waits until they're silent until he lets out an exasperated groan, sinking into the sofa. His tank drags up his body as he slides. I just keep getting stupider. Chapter 5 Over the weekend, Izuku rests on the common room table as his group members try to come up with weaknesses for Mount Lady. In their allotted lesson time, they got around to very little. Ochako, however, had her way with creative freedom, and decorated the page with pink and purple lettering. You know what it's missing? She asks the air, sizing up the paper before her. A picture. Deku, can you draw her in the middle? Izuku sits up. His head was throbbing and his cheeks were flush. Katsuki was in the gym. He had the simple kindness to ask Izuku if he wanted to come with, save him from his fever, but Izuku declined. His fault. Draw Mount Lady. I don't know if I'd do her justice. Izuku says sheepishly. Sure you would. I've seen your dawdles in your notebook, you're super good. Ochako encourages. I think we need to focus on the actual substance of the project, rather than design. Ida says persistently. He looks to Shoto for agreement, but is only met with a plain face chewing on cold soba. He didn't get around to having breakfast. I don't know, Shoto says with his mouth horribly full. I think a drawing is nice. Why does no one agree with me? Ida sighs. Ochako begins to giggle. Okay, we can come up with the material while Deku draws the picture. Sound good? Perfect. Ida smiles, getting his way. Izuku picks up a pencil from Ochako's pencil case. It's new, hardly sharpened, and covered in small Miffies. I love Miffy. Ochako grins. I hope you don't mind. I like Miffy, too. Izuku smiles and reaches for a sharpener. When the pencil is pointy, he marks out a rough rectangle that represents the size of Mount Lady in the center of the page. Is this too big? No. Perfect. Ochako gives a thumbs up. Okay. Izuku pulls a nervous face. I hope I can draw her well, it's been a few years. He giggles. The lines come pretty easy to him as he looks back and forth at a reference. She's appealing, he thinks. She has long blonde hair that's fun to draw. He slides the pencil in fluid waves, giving her hair a little more volume than evident in the photo. When he has to draw her figure, he feels a little flustered. He looks up sheepishly and hopes Ochako doesn't think he's a pervert. After a while, he's pretty satisfied that it looks similar to her. He's shaded her mask and purple parts of her suit, and added a few little four-line stars beside her head. Midoriya, that's very good. Shoto comments as Izuku sits back. You think? I don't know if the anatomy is right. Izuku squints at his own picture. No, I like it. It looks just like her. Shoto grabs the paper and looks to it closer. Ida and Ochako peer over, too. Oh my goodness, Deku. It's so cute. Ochako squeals. I wish you drew more for us. Izuku rubs the back of his neck, flustered. Well, I've practiced a lot, I guess. Should we write down what we decided? Ida asks. I suggest bullet points. Let's write the titles in pink. Ochako smiles. Please, no. Ida sighs. Izuku mopes around for the remainder of the day. After his project was completed before he thought it'd be, he ran out of tasks for the day. And now, against the setting sun, his head ached and stomach turned. Katsuki was in his line of sight, cooking something in the kitchen, yet somehow he couldn't face him. Maybe it's because Katsuki said they weren't friends. Maybe Izuku's just shy. Maybe he's too tired to move. Except, it's definitely because Katsuki said they weren't friends. So he slumped against the dormitory window, watching the sky turn pink. He felt helplessly sick. His skin was hot and sweaty and burning, and his stomach threatened vomiting every few moments. If he stared at the sky too long, his mind started to spin and twist. Izuku sighed against the glass, fogging it up. He only had to stand beside Katsuki for a few moments, and everything would be fine. But can you really face a boy you've looked up to your whole life, after he said you weren't friends? Izuku only feels sicker. He should speak to someone, it would probably make him feel better. Maybe he'd call Ochako, or Ida, and spill how annoyed he was. But he just didn't feel like it. Talking felt like a chore, and his complaints started to sound a little ridiculous as he mumbled them to himself. The sky was getting darker, and his body felt weaker. The longer he was dealing with the quirk, the worse it got. Izuku could throw up if he walked any further away. He felt helpless. Relying on Katsuki made him feel helpless. It took so much to break away from it, from living just to watch his back, and Izuku was slipping back into the hell that is Katsuki's shadow. Not to mention, Katsuki hates having Izuku rely on him. Nothing was good. A sharp pain in his frontal forehead made him wince and close his eyes against the glass. It was awful, feeling so unwell. He hoped no one could see him. But when his headache started to ease, he thought two things. He's finally ascending to heaven, or Katsuki is standing next to him. The forehead is always the first to go. Sit up, nerd, you're not special. Katsuki spits, looming over Izuku's dramatic self. Ha! Izuku mumbles, peering open his eyes. It killed him how better he felt already. Stop thinkin', you're some big shot, staring out the window like you're thinkin' about something mega. Just get up and eat your dinner. Katsuki insults, eyes furrowed and judging Izuku. Izuku, too tired to care about last night events, opens his eyes. My dinner. I haven't got round to making it yet. I know, idiot. You haven't for like 3 days. Katsuki groans. It's so unhealthy, not eating dinner. It messes with your metabolism. Stop judging my eating habits. Izuku mumbles, resting the back of his head on the glass and sitting properly against the windowsill. Just eat. Katsuki rolls his eyes. He pushes up a bowl of something and for the first time, Izuku notices it. He was too tired to look and his nose was too blocked to smell it, but his eyes were fine, and Izuku was looking at a sparkly bowl of katsudon. Oh my goodness. Izuku grins, abandoning all hesitation around Katsuki and what he said last night. My favorite, you made it for me. Izuku says, grabbing the bowl and wooden chopsticks. You need to eat, or you'll be ugly and thin. Katsuki says coldly. Cold eggs won't save you, bstrd. Izuku shoves a large helping of pork into his mouth and delights in the flavor on his tongue. Oh my word, this is so good. If the heroing doesn't work out, consider this. Izuku says, pointing his chopsticks to the bowl. Whatever, just eat it and shut up. I hate it when you speak with your mouth full. Katsuki says, turning his back and beginning to walk away. However, he stops suddenly, and looks over his shoulder. I guess I also made it. 'Cause I don't know, I was kinda but, Katsuki mutters, turning back to face Izuku. Last night. So, sorry, I guess. Kirishima told me to say sorry. You spoke to him? Izuku asks immediately. Did you feel bad? F off, I never feel bad. Katsuki frowns. I just think I said some things that I didn't mean. That's all. Now, shut up and eat. It's going to get cold, shitty butt. In his weird way, he was remarkably sweet. Izuku grins. Okay. Thanks for the. He stops as Katsuki sounds around, trudging away with his stupid walk. Katsudon. Earlier in the day, Katsuki had woke with a persistent rage. He felt it in the way he snapped at breakfast, furious that someone would leave the milk out to get warm instead of putting it back into the fridge. And how short his temper was when people were saying good morning to him. He's a temperamental person, but not that bad. Kirishima, being the ever-caring friend he was, noticed his unusual attitude. Hey, you good, man? He asked as they walked to the gym. Katsuki, for a fleeting second, had felt guilty for leaving the dorm and potentially making Izuku sick, but Izuku was sleeping at 6 a.m., and persistent he was fine. Fine. When am I not good? Katsuki said a little too quickly. The sun was yet to rise, and the cold air chilled his exposed arms. Well, you seem a little snappy. You can tell me if there's something on your mind. Kirishima reassured. Katsuki wrestled with the idea of it. Talk to someone. Unheard of. No, thanks. He said, adding the thanks when he thought over how Kirishima has called him snappy. Suit yourself, but I'm here. Maybe you can get all your anger out while we pump iron. Kirishima suggested, forming his hands into fists before his chest. They walked a while longer in silence, Katsuki listening to his own irritated breaths before the words began to spill from his mouth. Okay, I messed up really bad. He said finally, groaning at himself. Huh. What happened? I'm just in but, is all. And I keep spittin' out things I don't mean. Katsuki kicked an idle rock on the ground. To Deku. He added when he realized how vague he was being. Midoriya. It's okay, man, what did you say? Kirishima asked, tightening the grip he had on his bag strap. Just. Katsuki started, he struggled to talk about himself like this. You know lunch the other day, when he sat with us. Yeah, that was sweet. Sweet. Don't say sweet. Katsuki flinched. That stupid idiot was laughing at me, and I don't know. Kaminari. Kirishima asked. Are you annoyed about his joke? No, I wasn't. Well, I always am. But not then. Deku was, 'cause he didn't get it. Katsuki shrugged, he felt a little better letting his thoughts out. He's got some stupid anxiety, especially about things like that. And I'd have let Dunce's face explain it make him relax, you know, but obviously I couldn't. Kirishima couldn't help but smile. Yeah, otherwise Midoriya would no dash, shut up. Katsuki spat. What's important is that I was a total but after. He, was super freaked about it, how he usually is when he gets all worked up about himself, and I don't know I was just listening. Kirishima listened as they walked, nodding slowly. When they reached the doors of the gym, they walked in without faltering, and Katsuki continued to talk. And then that idiot was laughing at me, because I told him this secret joke was embarrassing. Which was dumb, so I was in a bad mood. And that's why, when he asked why I would tell you this secret and not him, I said it was because we were friends. Kirishima gasped. And not him. Baku bro, that's harsh. Katsuki rolled his eyes. That's why I'm saying I'm in but. Kirishima shoved his bag down beside a pile of weights. Hey, at least you feel bad. That means you're not in but. How? I said something shitty. But you didn't mean it. You were just nervous. All you gotta do is tell Midoriya you're sorry and he won't mind much. It's when you're purposefully in but that people start to not forgive you. Kirishima offered helpfully, pulling off his maroon hoodie. And anyway, Midoriya is super forgiving. Trust, he won't mind. Just tell him you were embarrassed and slipped up. Katsuki stood still, thinking over it all. You think that's fine? Enough. If you want to do more, that's better. Kirishima said idly, not thinking too much of it. Really? Like what? I hate saying sorry like a normal person. Katsuki admits blatantly. Kirishima scoffs. Well, you know what they say, actions speak louder than words. He says, scanning the labels on the weights. Katsuki thought for a while, plan brewing in his brain. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Kirishima smiled. Glad I could help. That night, Katsuki deliberated over what he could do to make up for himself. He wasn't one to feel guilty, mostly because he never realized that what he said was actually awful. He could do Izuku's homework, but then he realized he'd hate that. Maybe clean his room. But it was always pristine. Katsuki thought over what he was actually good at, and he was reminded of Izuku's poor diet. 3 eggs and some shitty popcorn. He winced at the idea of it. Even if he was ill, you can't just not eat. And then it hit him, Katsuki was a marvelous chef. It didn't take long to decide what Izuku would like. That boy had been eating katsudon like it was going out of fashion since he learned to have likes and dislikes. Katsuki never liked it much, he didn't like the tame flavor and pork taste. When they ate together, he usually fished the pork out of his bowl and ate the rice. Like a moth to the flame, Kirishima strolled into the kitchen. Man, I'm starving. What's cooking? Nothing for you. Katsuki said, watching the breaded pork fry. For you. I thought you hated katsudon. Kirishima stated. Oh, my word. Are you making it 4-can it? You told me to. Kirishima sat back on the kitchen counter. Hey, he's really sick, you know. Think he'll eat it? He has to. Katsuki said as he flipped the pork over. I'm making it for him. Kirishima giggled. He probably will, but don't make him barf. Katsuki flinched. He won't. Kirishima folded his arms over his chest and watched Katsuki cooking. He was a complicated person, and Kiri took the time to debate what it is that makes him so, for lack of better words, weird. Tell me, Bakubro, what's up with you and Midoriya? You two have been acting weird since since he got sick. Kirishima asked. Katsuki stilled. Nothing. That's not true. Kirishima laughed. Tell me, I won't tell anyone. Why the F you asking all the questions today? Katsuki asked, refusing to turn around. I don't want you to keep things to yourself. Kirishima said simply. Katsuki took the pork from the pan and set it down on a plate. The rice should soon be cooked, and he only needed to make the sauce. It's complicated. Katsuki decided. Really? Kirishima began elusively. No. There was a silence, a long and pained silence. I'll tell you another time. I'm busy now. Katsuki said, too fed up with talking for the time being. Okay, man. Kirishima shrugged, pushing himself off the counter. But don't bottle things up, it's not good for you. Yeah, whatever, weird hair. Katsuki said. Kirishima grinned. Enjoy cooking. Chapter 6 Izuku knocks the back of his head onto the floor as he slumps down. It sends a painful wave of aching through his brain, but he's too weak to care. He should get up, it's weird to lay on the floor at 2 a.m., and yet he can't move. The sound of the tap bursting with water keeps him conscious. It spins around his head and worsens the throbbing in his brain. His skin is prickling with the cold and starry feeling you get before you pass out. If he opens his eyes, he can't guarantee it won't still be dark. His main concern is if he'll be able to wake before morning. Will people see him lying on the floor? Will he choke on his own sick and die in the night? Will Denki take a terrible picture of him before he's up to stop him? Izuku coughs, the force of it bouncing his chest up and down, body too weak in this state to handle himself. The last Izuku had seen of Katsuki was when he gave him dinner. That was around 6 hours ago, and for the rest of the night Izuku was up in a fevered nightmare. The distance needed between them was shortening with each day, perhaps it was the constant distance that made the case more severe. Maybe it would have gotten better if he had stayed by Katsuki's side from the start. Now wasn't a time for maybes. He was sick, and getting sicker. Izuku could toughen up and tell Katsuki to sort himself out and sit with him more often, but he began to curate his own mangled sense of guilt. Katsuki didn't want this as much as Izuku didn't, they just didn't want different things. Izuki didn't want to have a fever, he didn't want Katsuki to hate being around him, he didn't want Katsuki to like others more than him. He didn't want Katsuki to forget Izuku was first his favorite person, and he hasn't changed at all. Izuku could still be his favorite person if he'd open his heart. Izuku didn't want to feel these things. And Katsuki didn't want it either. He didn't want the stress and effort of opening and unloading a discarded past. He didn't want to face his actions, except he had done wrong. He didn't want Izuku to look up to him too much. He didn't want to deal with it all. And thus, knowing this, Izuku developed a twisted guilt. He'd never be Katsuki's favorite if he was begging for his presence. As kids, that's all Izuku ever did, chase after him. From the way Katsuki speaks about it, it infuriated him. Izuku didn't want that. Katsuki doesn't want that. Izuku didn't notice the tap turning off until his body was shaken awake. When he realized someone was speaking to him, he was flurried with an overwhelming embarrassment. Get up, Izuku hears, a soft but forceful tone. Deku. He hears again, softer. MH. Izuku mumbles, shifting on the floor. Sit up. Come on, I can't do all the work. The voice asks, hand firm over Izuku's shoulder. It was a tight grip that contrasted the soft tone. A desperate grip. Izuku takes a hand to his eyes and rubs them until he sees stars. He tries his very hardest to sit up, but his body is so weak he can't do it. He found moving with broken bones easier than this lethargic, melancholic and fevered act. Oh gosh. He mumbles to himself. His voice comes out croaky and hoarse. It hurts his throat to speak. When he opens his eyes, it's completely dark. Maybe he didn't open them. Maybe it's just 2 a.m. Izuku feels two hands under his arms as he's pulled roughly to a sitting position. The fast and fluid action makes his stomach turn, and he lets out a strangled sigh. Ow, he groans. Sorry. The soft tone says. You weren't getting up like I asked. "S okay." Izuku slurs. I'm up. He pulls his knees to his chest as he rests against the kitchen counter, placing his head on top of his bony knees. Sleep, or unconsciousness in some form, threatens him. Night. Izuku mumbles. Thanks. The F. You can't sleep here. The soft and growing angrier tone says. Deku, get up. I'll take you back to your dorm. Deku. Izuku mumbles as he repeats his nickname. That you, Kaken. He says in his fevered demeanor. His smile is heard through his tone, even though his face is buried between his legs. Yeah. Get up. Katsuki, now identified, asks. Or tells, he sounds like he's telling Izuku. I can't. Izuku complains. I'll stay here, okay. Katsuki lets out an irritated sound. No, idiot. Why are you doing this to me? Izuku sits up, head wobbling in its place. He flinches at the newfound, though minimal, light and squints in Katsuki's direction. He's close. His hair is messy from sleeping, and he's shirtless. Most evidently, however, is the angry face Katsuki is pulling. Doing this to you? Why are you doing this to me, huh? Izuku slurs. It's remarkable how long it's taking for him to feel better in Katsuki's company. Wah, don't blame this on me. What the F are you doing in the kitchen at 2 a.m.? Throwing up. 'Cause you don't talk to me. Izuku mumbles, each word stringing with the next. His cheeks are hot and distracting. Talk to you? Katsuki asks quietly. He thinks. You don't talk to me. How am I meant to know what you're feeling? Izuku scoffs, but he's tired and weak and it sounds more like a choke. Maybe he is choking, maybe he's crying. Well, you don't make it real easy. You're always turning your nose up at me. And shouting at me. Izuku trails off, his words cleared the louder he spoke. His headache still throbbed. Katsuki audibly gulps. Well, he tries to defend, but his points are all useless. Slowly, he thinks of what Kirishima told him earlier. At least you feel bad. That means you're not in but. Does it? Katsuki feels the pit of guilt swallowing up his insides. Does that make it better? How could it? He's doing wrong, so much wrong, and it can't just be excused because he's sorry. Izuku is sick and weak and suffering, and he's the only cause. Is it okay because he's emotional? All you gotta do is tell Midoriya you're sorry and he won't mind much. It's when you're purposefully in but that people start to not forgive you. How right could Kirishima be? Deku, are you listening? Katsuki confirms before he speaks. The small and messy head of hair before him nods a little, raising a hand to wipe his cheek. Okay. I think I've been a little unfair these past few days. He begins, and Izuku's tired eyes widen. I don't mind your company, alright, so stop trying to beat this on your own. Like you said, that's not how it works. So come and speak to me when you feel sick. Izuku, mindlessly tired and sick, nods his head. Alright. He lets out, the easiest word that comes to mind. Okay. Sorry. Katsuki adds spontaneously. I'm sorry, I mean. Okay, Kaken. Izuku sneezes. Katsuki feels a surge of emotion at the sound of his words. So easily forgiving. Katsuki's a terrible person. Right. Well, I'll take.